Thank you, Mr. Chair. Admiral, you called this out about President Xi Jinping's move. In '82, Deng Xiaoping put term limits in after the excesses of Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution. We saw 30 years of economic development. Today, we have a leader for life in China. I see that development along with the Belt and Road strategy that you so eloquently have called out over the last year as two major initiatives that I think give us a hint at their long-term strategy. And it looks like if you look at the global map, a new world order could be in mind here between Europe, Asia, and Africa. In Africa alone, they've got over 20 ports that they've invested in and developed. Today, they have $200 billion in loans in Asia, the Pacific, Africa, and Europe. They've promised over $1.2 trillion of future loans. That's 10 times the size of the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Asia and Europe earlier or in the middle part of last century. Sir, my concern is that we already see their intent. The Marshall Plan was not loans primarily. It was philanthropy. This investment, the $1.2 trillion that's coming, is mostly in the form of loans. And in Africa, as an example, they're loaning money into these ports and the ports development. Sri Lanka, we already have an example where some of those loans went bad, and China foreclosed, and now China for 99 years has a port in Sri Lanka. In addition to Djibouti, and in addition to what they're doing in the Belt and Road strategy, can you tie together that for us, the danger it has to the world order we enjoy today, where representative democracies in the free world dominate the cultural political situation? Do you see it this way, and are you calling that out for us to think about this in a longer-term perspective regarding to what we see evidence of right now in terms of the China strategy with the Belt and Road and also with President Xi Jinping's change to a lifetime leader?
Senator, I do see it that way. As I said earlier, I do believe that for those of us, myself included, who wonder the kind of country that China will be in 2049, I think we're seeing that now. We're seeing that play out with this move toward a leader for life. We're seeing it play out in OBOR, One Belt, One Road, or the Belt Road Initiative, which is not only about development, which of itself is a good, but it's not about development as much as it is about malign influence throughout the region, making China the security partner of choice and pushing the United States and our friends, allies, and partners out of the region. So I think it has a strategic impact beyond simple development. China announced a few weeks ago the Polar Silk Road. I mean, and that's a clear indication that China views the Arctic as a sphere of influence for them. There are some Chinese scholars that would actually suggest that the resources in the Arctic, a portion of those resources should be China's because they have a fifth of the world's population. So I think we should look at that carefully, consider what that means in the long term. China is putting their money where their mouth is. They have 4 icebreakers and building to a 5th. I think that's significant. You know, why would a country have that kind of capability if it has no border on the Arctic or Antarctic? Because they're interested in the resources that are there, because they've called that out and named it the Polar Silk Road.
Thank you, sir. Following up on that, the committee took the lead recently in establishing the Southeast Asia Maritime Security Initiative in the FY16 NDAA to support maritime domain awareness capabilities of our partners and allies confronting sovereignty challenges in the South China Sea. You've called out the dangers in the South China Sea. You talk about thousands of acres of reclaimed property there used primarily for military use. This program, the Southeast Asia Maritime Security Initiative, is now ramping up with $98 million requested in the FY19 budget. Would you please give us your assessment of the strategic importance of the Maritime Security Initiative? And in your view, what signal would it send if this initiative did not receive full funding?
Senator, I'm a big believer in the Maritime Security Initiative. It's $425 million across 5 years. It's not a lot of money. But we have put the $190 million or so over the past 3 years, including this year, to good use. We've put it to use to improve maritime domain awareness. And the Maritime Security Initiative affects our Southeast Asian partners, principally Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand. in Vietnam. And we're using this funding to improve their maritime domain awareness so they can understand what's happening in their water space. We're using it to improve things like the Sulu Sea Initiative, which goes after sea crime, kidnap for ransom, and piracy in the Sulu Sea and the Gulf of Thailand area. These are important things that signal our interest and our willingness to help our friends and allies and partners that are affected by the Maritime Security Initiative. To cut that funding or to pull us out of it would send the wrong signal at the wrong time, in my opinion.
Thank you, Admiral, and I just want to echo the voices of my colleagues in thanking you for your decades of service and for your willingness to continue that service in Australia. It's a very critical post, as you well know, as we heard earlier in question, and I just thank God for your career and your help for the United States of America. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator.